right, welcome to Autism Spa, Diana Pastora Carson. So great to have you here. We've been talking, I've been learning about all the amazing contributions to the cause that you've made. And as you know, I speak with experts on autism and special needs issues all over the world. And I really wanted to hear from, an author, a teacher, someone with a sibling, as you do, and someone that's been working on disability awareness. I think someone that teaches teachers how to teach special needs, and some of the experiences that you've had are unique in what you're able to contribute to the cause. So tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get into this field? And we'll go from there.
Thank you so much, Sharyar, for having me here today. My background is I am a recently retired elementary school teacher. I am also a sibling advocate for my amazing, wonderful brother, Joaquin Carson, and I have to say that I speak with his blessing and his consent to share about our journey. And if I didn't have his consent to share about that, then I feel like I would not have the right and the privilege of being able to share. That's so important for his dignity, because a lot of what I share is difficult to digest for him and our family and for the rest of the community.
Right.
So I also teach disability studies. I co-teach a class at San Diego State University to about 500 students per semester. And I've taught disability studies courses and special education courses to teachers at San Diego State University, the University of San Diego, and a variety of local community colleges as well. I've done a TEDx talk on our family's journey called The Walk with Joaquin. I served 2 terms with Disability Rights California, and I currently serve on the board of directors for Disability Voices United. Last year, I had the amazing opportunity to interview 30 plus, actually about 50 leaders in the disability rights, disability justice movement in collaboration with Ability Magazine. I am the author of, I happen to have here, and I didn't think to bring them closer to me, Beyond Awareness, Bringing Disability into Diversity Work in K-12 Schools and Community. And this illustration right here was painted by none other than my friend on the autism spectrum, Jack Medved. Oh, and then this is my children's book, but it's also great for adults. It's Ed Roberts, Champion of Disability Rights. And it's got beautiful illustrations by Patrick William Connolly, who's also a person with a disability. And that's really important. Disability representation in the media is so important.
Right. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So tell us, what's beyond awareness? How did it start? How did you really, a lot of people have an interest in this topic, but they don't do what you did.
Okay, so here's how it happened. So I had been teaching, so I've taught special education and I've taught general education, and I was taught by my mentors, wonderful, good-hearted people, about doing disability awareness in schools. And so I followed in that. I was passionate about it. I always had disability awareness events at my school that I would coordinate, and I thought I was doing the right thing, the right way, the right thing. And then when I had this opportunity to start teaching disability studies at the college level. And so I had to learn more about disability history and disability rights, disability justice, and access and inclusion from a research-based lens. And when I did that, I realized, oh my gosh, all these things that I'm doing, all these simulation activities I'm doing, where I'm putting on a blindfold on children and saying, now you know what it's like to be blind, was not cutting it, because they actually did not know the experience of being blind simply by putting on a blindfold for 30 seconds. They cannot know the experience of ableism, of discrimination, of lack of access, and all those things that come along with the actual lived experience, body or mind experience of having a disability, whether it be autism, blindness, deafness, mobility disability, whatever it is. I realized that, oh my gosh, if we had done disability awareness from a social justice lens, my brother may not have ended up in an institution. He
Right.
may have had access to curriculum that mattered to him. He may have had access to inclusion and relationships that mattered to him. He may have been perceived completely different. He may have been honored for who he was. He may have had access to reliable, meaningful communication if
Right.
we had done disability awareness in a different way. And so that's how I started shifting my focus when I was doing disability awareness in the elementary schools.
Wow.
And people started asking me, what are you doing? This is so powerful. What is it that you're doing? And so I was able to pinpoint the things that I had modified to have them be progressive, productive, anti-ableist in nature, research-based, so that we would have more positive, empowering outcomes for all people with disabilities.
Right. So in your journey, you found that, this is just my observation too, when I talk with experts all over the world, doctors and therapists, that there are individuals in the educational system are well-meaning, they want to help, but they may not know, they may not have the training, and so your contribution is helping them kind of go on their own journey, so they can better understand how to help differently abled people.
Or disabled people.
Yeah.
Disabled people.
Yeah.
There's a movement that says, just say the word, say it,
Yeah.
disabled. There's no
It is.
shame in disability. There's
Yeah.
no stigma that needs to be associated with. We could say disabled
Right.
and be
Right.
proud of it.
Right.
And I know that may seem insensitive to some people, like parents who are in the thick of it right now. And I understand, because my family, we have been in the thick of it. And, my brother was institutionalized for 15 years as a result of being in the thick of it. But part of that thickness, part of that tragedy is the lack of societal support
Right.
for
Right.
families who desperately need it. I know some of us are in survival mode right now, and it's really hard to
Yeah.
hear this part right now.
Right.
That's not, with total humility and respect for those families, because we've been there and we still have days like that. We still
Yeah.
have days like that, even though my brother we fought for 3 years in court to get him out of an institution, and he has the best support team possible. We still have really tough days. We still cry
Right.
sometimes, we
Right.
still want more for him.
Right.
So I get that. And when people are ready to hear what is available, when we shift, when we just, that big word pivot, when we pivot our mindset just a little bit to embrace who our loved one is deep down, and come in with the knowledge that it's not their fault. It's not
Right.
all the autism. It's not all the disability's fault. Much of the frustration comes in from not having adequate supports,
Right.
not having societal supports, and facing ableism systematically in our regional centers or support network systems, or in the educational system, in social arenas, in religious arenas. So many different variables come into play with how we as a family experience our loved ones' disability.
Right. So what should be done differently? I mean, you kind of got into it, you kind of assessed all of these barriers, and like you say, so many societal barriers. It's just not one or two. What can be done?
So I think the first thing is just to be open to a new understanding. For me, I just had to be open. I had to go and ask people who lived the experience of disability what was needed in order for them to be most supported. I had to read biographies by people who experienced disability. I had to go to conferences and hear from people on the spectrum, and really truly embrace what they were saying with a humble heart, even when it was hard to hear, and establish, my boundaries, my limits, my abilities, but also take it for what it was worth, and re-look at who my brother was, and re-look at what he needed. And I'll tell you, Shariar, that transformed his experience of life when I was able to see him not as a crisis or a problem, or
Right.
someone who is defective,
Right.
but see my mindset around and the educator's mindset around, and the social, services people's mindset around who he was, and start seeing him for who he really was and embracing the beauty of him, that helped me to understand what he was communicating, what he was trying to communicate that wasn't coming through, because he's minimally speaking, and very rarely is his verbal communication reliable. So we had to find other ways to empower him with communication. And once we did that, he was able to start this healing journey. Like, wow, people are helping me to have a voice. People are not speaking for me. They're holding up the microphone so that my voice can be amplified.
Yeah.
And that gave him courage. That gave him peace within. Not every day, because some days are really hard with anxiety and medical issues. He's a man in his 50s, so there's stuff going on with him that's sometimes hard to pinpoint, but he has hope.
Right.
I didn't mention at the beginning, he's my next door neighbor.
Oh.
I can throw a football.
Lucky you. Yeah.
He's right over there, and
Right.
he knows if he needs me,
Right.
I can come and I can support him.
Yeah.
So that's what needs to, in terms of schools, we need to stop focusing on the medical model of the disability, and we need to start focusing on teaching kids about ableism. We need to start teaching them about assistive technology. We need to start teaching them about access and inclusion, because without access, there is no inclusion. We need to teach them about disability history and about being respectful of different people's language preferences. If somebody wants to be known as a person first,
Right.
Great. That's their preference, their identity preference. If they want to be known as disabled first, I am disabled and proud, then honor that.
Yeah.
They need to understand that we need to be a unified front for disability justice, for social justice, and join in with other social justice movements. It's not all about disability justice. We all need to support one another in having equity and access in our lives.
Right.
So
It's interesting when you speak, and you're kind of obviously looking at society more than the individual. Of course, you're looking at the individual, how to help the individual, but this has always kind of been a recurring pattern in a lot of the conversations I have with experts around the world, is that it's not just what we can do for that individual or what they can do, is how society needs to change, how we need to adapt to the capabilities of disabled folks, special needs, autism, kids on the spectrum, adults on the spectrum. I mean, and you just kind of touched on the complexities just from your own journey as your brother's going through growing up and in his age. You have a certain set of issues when you're, in kindergarten, elementary and middle school and high school and college. And frankly, not everybody makes it to an educational system. Many special needs folks do need 24/7 care. They are nonverbal. They have significant, developmental delays, keeping them from clearly communicating what's in their heart. And this is another thing I've again realized as I'm doing this podcast. Almost everyone universally agrees that they're in there, that there is a soul in there, there is a consciousness in there, even if they can't communicate the way society has labeled acceptable communication. They're most certainly in there. They have feelings, they have everything. My son, at 13, is nonverbal. He needs 24/7, care, but he most certainly has a personality. He is able to express affection and dislike. He can ignore me just like my other son can ignore me, as any teenager would. But it's just recognizing the individualness of, special needs kids and adults is a journey that society needs to pay greater attention to. Sounds like what you're saying.
Absolutely. I want to piggyback on that. One of our friends, Peyton Goddard, who is the author of I Am Intelligent. She co-authored a book that's extraordinary. If parents listening, this book is amazing. You will be in tears. But she's a local friend of ours, and we speak with her and her family regularly and have visits with them. But she has a quote that I love, and it's, "Esteeming each person as vastly valuable seeds their peaceful self, seeds their peaceful self. So we need to esteem each person as vastly valuable. And that sounds like what you're doing with your son.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
nothing broken about him. He may
Yeah.
have significant behavior support
Yeah.
needs, significant communication support needs, but there is something to be learned with him and from him in this life.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And honestly, I'll tell you, I mean, my other son knows this, but my special needs son is being next to him is one of my favorite places to be in the world. So it's and I think a lot of parents feel that way, not just because, they think they need them more, but my abled son, this disabled son, however which way we want to call it, is capable of great compassion, and he has great power in spewing love and compassion to anyone standing next to him. He is loved, just beloved by everybody around him. And I don't know if that's just his personality. That's him. It's not like because he's disabled or he's autistic, he has that capability of certain confidence about him, even if he can't speak, which kind of leads me to, I think something we want to talk about is, sometimes we kind of hold disabled folks on a pedestal, and they're inspirational because they're disabled. And I kind of want to understand a little bit more about your viewpoints about how that plays into how we're evolving as a society to look at disability.
Yes. So what you're referring to is inspiration porn is what the term is. And there's a
Right.
great TED Talk by Stella Young, may
Right.
she rest in peace. And it's about 10 minutes long. And if anybody's interested in knowing more about this, I'll give a brief summary. But basically, inspiration porn is when we elevate people and say, if they can do it, so can you. It's objectifying people solely based on the fact that they have a disability in order to lift ourselves up, to give us pleasure.
Right.
And it's seen as greatly offensive, and it's not a way to do disability awareness. Because what we're doing is we're saying, look at how great they are. They were able to get out of bed and tie their shoes, and they could do all these things that we do. They had a cup of coffee. Oh my gosh, aren't they wonderful? And what we forget is they're doing all these things often in the absence of a society or in the presence of a society that is ableist and that puts up so many barriers to dignity, to independence, to access for everything, for employment, education, relationships, communication, financial stability, and so much more. Right. And so we do this, and we are totally clueless that they're fighting every day, not against their own, mental or physical disability per se, but societal barriers. And so it's a slap in the face. Just don't do it. Don't do it. Don't participate in it. And we all are learning. I'm learning still about this, but it's important to be aware. Watch Stella Young's TED Talk, Stella Young on YouTube.
Got it. No, I think that's a good point. We're all learning. And, I think it's incorrect to stereotype disabled people, any one group of people that all share the same traits. They're different people. Some are inspirational, some are not. Some are, some have, they have different qualities, different abilities. And I think, again, when your society looking at people like that, it's easy to stereotype and fall into a trap, as you're describing it in so many ways. But look, you've gone through your own personal journey, and almost everyone I talk to on these podcasts, they all have doctors, therapists, they all have some. What have you learned, now that you're doing this, disability awareness, what have you learned, and how does this change your relationship with your brother?
Wow. Well, one thing that I've learned is to grant myself and others grace. We're all learning. It is part of a journey, and we have been brought up in this culture that has taught us so many things wrong, in a wrong way. And so we need to, go forward with cultural humility and grace for ourselves and forgiveness for ourselves if we've participated in ableist thinking and ableist practices. And so I have to do that repeatedly with myself and always be open to new learnings from people who experience disability themselves.
Right, right.
What I've learned is not all professionals are I don't consider any professionals as experts unless they experience disability.
Right.
They may be experts in some things, but they don't have firsthand knowledge of ableism in terms of ableist discrimination. So I do include some families,
Right.
those who are on the front lines for their loved ones, with their loved ones, who, for whatever reason, at any given point in time, just need them to be there for them. Not saying that they should always be the one speaking for their child. Again, amplifying the voice of the child, providing a way for that child to communicate. I've learned that. And when I learned that my role was not to speak for Joaquin and not to do for Joaquin and not to judge Joaquin, but to listen, to actually truly listen to everything about his communication and not just hear his voice, but to honor it, even if it was hard for me to honor what he wanted or needed at that time, then that would promote him having a healing in his life and able to have a more self-determined, inner peace-filled life.
Right.
So that changed our relationship. It really did. And not all siblings are ready at the same point that I was ready. And there's no judgment there. And my humblest of gratitude for families who are experiencing that journey and trying to find balances and boundaries and all that stuff. But for me, when I was ready, it transformed my relationship to Joaquin and empowered him so much. And I wish that for every family relationship, as well as educator relationship to their students.
Right.
To really embrace and honor the experience of their students, of all the children.
Right. I hope for the same. It's difficult, like you say, like you can't possibly relate to someone just that's blind by just putting a blindfold on. You can always take the blindfold off. You didn't have to go through a day of, either feeling the anxiety of, not having. So same thing with autism, kind of being in there and not being able to speak, or having all the anxieties and the challenges that come with people on the spectrum.
And the judgment from the outside world.
Yeah, sure. Well, like my typical son struggles with that judgment, and he's dealing with that, in middle school. So why wouldn't, my special needs son? So, Diana, tell me about, now we're wrapping up, tell us a little bit about your books, your online platform. I'm going to have all of this in the bottom of the blog under the podcast, but I want to hear from you what your sense is.
Thank you. Yeah, I would love to. So I have an upcoming digital course called Beyond Awareness. And to get people started, if they'd like just to get a taste of what it's going to be about, I have a free downloadable ebook called The 5 Keys to Going Beyond Awareness. It's very helpful to people wanting to learn more about how to create a powerful, respectful, research-based disability event or conversation. And that's at www.gobeyondawareness.com/keys, KEYS, right. Gobeyondawareness.com/keys. And I also, so I wanted to say that that's also perfect for educators and parents. Sometimes parents just need something they can share with their school. If they want to, have the school be transformed towards a more inclusive mindset, this is a great segue for parents to introduce to the educators in their child's life. It has simple, actionable steps that can be implemented right away in classrooms and in school communities. And if you get that free ebook, you also get the updates to any other offerings that I will have. And you can find me on social media, on Facebook. I have a Beyond Awareness page on Facebook and a Ed Roberts Children's Book Facebook page. And I'm also on Instagram under Diana Pastora Carson, and LinkedIn also under Diana Pastora Carson.
Amazing. Listening to all that you've done, I feel like I've wasted my life, and I just haven't done anything yet. but
No.
uh, but I'm glad that we did connect on this conversation. We're gonna keep in touch. We're gonna talk more as maybe new books and new programs come out. We're in this struggle together with our loved ones. With your brother and my son. And people reach out to me from all over the world after they listen to a podcast, and people I've never heard of. I don't know. They're not in my connections, but they feel like our conversation touched their lives, and they learned something, and
Yes.
somehow they were better enabled to
Yeah.
deal with the struggles that they're having. So
Yeah.
that's the point of this podcast. That's the point of, I think, what we're both doing from different angles. So I'm glad that our mutual friend got us connected. We're going to keep in touch. And we're going to continue to follow your accomplishments, Diana Pastora Carson, with great anticipation and admiration. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Shahryar. Take care.
Take care.